Hello, this is Virtualis the Chess Noob, learning and having fun with chess. Forcing a draw when you're completely losing against a stronger opponent can feel better than winning. Let's have a look at this game. So this was a game of the Scandinavian, and as you can see from chess.com's algorithm, played okay until I made a pretty silly blunder, which we'll see in context, completely losing, and then managed to equalize with a draw. So let's have a look now at the analysis. So with the white pieces, as usual, e4, and the opponent plays the Scandinavian defense with d5. Now, I always capture, and interesting to me, the opponent didn't capture back with queen, but played bishop f5. I was reasonably sure that that probably wasn't the best move, but that's okay. So knight to c3 to defend that pawn. They've developed their other knight, that's cool. Developed the bishop to c4 to provide yet another defender. They play a6, so I think potentially looking at playing a b5. So let's block that with a4 myself. Now the opponent plays c6, which makes sense. So now a third attacker to the pawn. I didn't see any way of defending it further, so let's just straight up capture that pawn. So pawn captures pawn, and they capture back with developing their knight to c6. So that, I suppose, makes a lot of sense. I develop my other knight. They play e6. I play d3, and we're, I suppose, approaching the end of the opening. And, you know, still a small advantage to white. So bishop b4, I suppose that makes sense, trying to pin that knight. So short castles, get that knight out of the pin. They short castles as well. And here I play bishop g5, potentially pinning their knight to their queen. Now they move their bishop back to d6. I thought they would possibly capture to sort of damage the pawns on this side, but they sort of opted to preserve their bishop, which I suppose makes some sense. I play queen e2 here. Wasn't too sure what was the best move, but I thought connecting the rooks was probably okay. Still a small advantage to me. And basically that advantage is that pawn, which I captured on move 2. Otherwise, the position is fairly equal. So bishop now back to c7. So that bishop's moved quite a few moves, but, you know, potentially maybe there's something there. Now here is where I made the blunder. So what I was thinking was here, I wasn't too sure what to do. So I actually spent a fair amount of time calculating in this move, probably about 1.5 minutes. And very early on in the calculation, I saw knight to e4 as a candidate move. So, you know, placing a second attacker onto that knight. If they capture back, you know, I've got a I can sort of capture back with the pawn, and of course that's still defended by the queen. So I thought that potentially looked pretty good. And I decided, yep, the knight move was probably best. But this was one of the first moves I actually calculated. And by the end of the calculation, in my mind, I had just muddled up which knight was supposed to move. And for some reason, rather than that knight, I ended up moving the knight on f3, and of course I remember the knight sort of moved to the 4th rank, so knight move there, obviously a blunder because 2 attackers, and immediately after I made a move I realized, oh wait a minute, was that the wrong knight? And of course it's too late. No, can't take no take backs, you know, in chess.com. So here I knew I was probably doing really badly. So knight captures knight on d4, queen back now, and I knew I was losing. Now, in these sort of situations, after I make a blunder, I usually just try to play on. You know, opponent could sort of blunder back. Maybe there are some opportunities, and I just tried to play defensively, see whether or not I could get something. And part of that might be, you know, pushing some pawns into my opponent's king. So queen d6. So that needs to be addressed because that's a mate in one threat, but that can potentially be blocked with pawn to pawn to f4. No, Stockfish preferred this pawn, but I thought potentially this was okay. So knight g4, that's fine. Rook e1. I was thinking maybe there's potentially something there. I don't know. And also, you know, just preventing sort of a potential move here by that knight. Now, pawn attacking the queen. So the first pawn moving forward from the king. Potentially risky. Anytime you push a pawn in front of your king, there are some risks, even though, of course, my opponent is completely winning here. So what did I decide to do? I decided to counterattack the queen. Captures, that wasn't unexpected, I suppose. Capture back with pawn. And now I suppose I expected that, but now I had the opportunity to capture back eventually. Now, first I push the pawn, attack the queen, so make the queen move. Now I capture that knight, so the queen is now out of there. You know, again, now that that file is open, I thought, there are some potential chances. There are some potential chances. I couldn't see what the chances were yet, but I thought there were some chances. Queen captures, that makes sense. Again, push a pawn, develop, push the queen back somewhere. There we go. And of course, that is lined up. So move the king just out of that discovered check. I really don't like to have a discovered check there. They make a rook move, activating the rook, potentially okay. I develop the other rook, rook AD1. And here, what was I thinking? I was thinking maybe if I could push that pawn, I could do something about that. Again, can I damage the defenses of the king? They move their other rook, rook AC8. Stockfish likes this, but I wasn't really convinced that that did very much. Of course, that rook doesn't really go anywhere there. So here, pawn captures pawn. So F captures the G5 pawn. And I thought this was good. Okay, this was potentially very good, I thought. So next move, my plan was to push. So they capture that pawn, and I thought that was fine because he pushed the pawn. What are you going to do? If they don't do anything, potentially, I could sort of, again, very much disturb the defenses of their king. And again, maybe there's something. Maybe there's something. They push the pawn forward, and this is a critical mistake because around the king, apart from the defenses of these pawns, especially for the diagonals, there are no other defenders. So the rooks can't defend potentially, the bishop is on this side of the pawns, the knight is too far away, the queen potentially can't defend. So here comes with check, and if the queen goes there, that would be checkmate. That pattern, queen against the king on the side of the board, is checkmate, cannot be stopped. So if I go here, the king has only one square to go because these squares are defended by that pawn. And if I then bring my queen back, there's another check. King is forced to go back. King is forced to then go back. And so here, potentially, there's a perpetual check. Now, I can't capture that because that's defended by the knight. And of course, sacrifice the rook. After that move, there's no way that the opponent can actually force another check. So if I capture the knight, they actually cannot capture back with one of the other pieces, because if they capture back with one of the other pieces, they can now not prevent this. So I decided to make the move. Rook captures knight, and they just blitz out the move. Queen captures, and you'll see 0, 0, 0. So check, king forced to move. Check. Now, the only way they can prevent a perpetual check is to block with the queen. But if they did that, of course, I just straight up win a queen, and I'm completely winning from that position. So back, check, back, check, back, draw. Threefold repetition, good game, GG. There are two big takeaways from this game. 1, double check a move before physically moving a piece. And 2, be very careful advancing a defensive pawn in front of your king. I hope you found this game interesting, and thanks for watching.